Right now against Islamic State terrorists, Germany announcing it will go farther than the United States in arming Kurdish fighters. Chancellor Angela Merkel says it is in her country's best interests to send the weapons, which will include heavy-duty rifles, bazookas, and anti-tank systems. U.S. officials only said they would give light weapons to the Kurds. The Kurdistan region is in green on this map. You can see the territory the Islamic State controls is quickly reaching that area. The Kurds consider themselves separate from Iraq and have their own capital, even their own fighting force, the Peshmerga. The Kurds suffered greatly under Saddam Hussein, who killed civilians with poisonous gas. The U.S. then protected them with a no-fly zone after the first Gulf War, sealing our relationship as allies. But since Kurdistan is not recognized as its own nation, the U.S. has hesitated to send heavy arms, preferring instead to go through the Baghdad central government. Joining us now, former U.S. Army helicopter pilot and Iraq War veteran Amber Barno. She's the spokeswoman for Concerned Veterans for America. So the Germans are going to do it. The U.S. is not. How significant is the material the Germans are going to be sending the Kurds?
The Germans are sending 3 shipments of over $90 million worth of arms to the Peshmerga inside Iraq throughout the month of September. We're looking at everything from machine guns and rifles, handguns, to Milans and bazooka anti-tank missiles, as well as up-armored vehicles. And this is all significant in the fight against ISIS because it is thought that ISIS has the equivalency of these types of weapons that they are fighting the Peshmerga and other counter-terrorism Iraqi forces in Iraq right now.
Yeah, and ironic that ISIS basically looted the coffers of the Iraqi military, got all of this up-armored stuff, Humvees and other battlefield weapons that the U.S. left behind. So now the Peshmerga are left, you know, almost with pea shooters against American military equipment.
It's time that we start supplying the people who are fighting ISIS right now with the equipment, the ammunition, everything that they need to fight ISIS inside of Iraq. But what we need to remember now is that ISIS is operating as a military. They are essentially a terrorist army. So they have a military structure. U.S. strategy needs to ensure that we are fighting them on the Syrian front as well as the Iraqi front. And that means going after their command and control structures inside Syria and the eastern safe havens that we've seen, including their infrastructure, their military supply routes, and their finances. Until we focus on that, we are only treating the symptom of ISIS and not the main problem of ISIS.
They have presented themselves as an almost, undefeatable military force, but when the U.S. went after them with a few airstrikes, it proved that they are certainly vulnerable, and weaponry like the kind that the Germans are getting ready to send to the Kurds could make the difference here.
It is, and I think that we are going to start seeing the tides turn inside Iraq, because we're doing what needs to be done inside Iraq, but we can't just focus on defeating them inside Iraq. As we know that they don't acknowledge the border between Syria and Iraq, they have Syria to retreat to and gain strength again if we stop fighting them because we've defeated them in Iraq. We have to look long term here instead of just short term on the Iraq front. Interesting
that Germany, which has been sort of loath, in the wake of what happened in World War II, Germany has been loath to send arms to other folks. That they are willing to arm these Kurds and to say, look, this is in our national interest as Germans to make sure that these ISIS fighters are defeated.
It's quite rare for Germany to get involved and send arms to foreign fighters in foreign conflicts, just as you mentioned, because of their aggression in World War I and World War II. Usually they like to stay out of it. But it just goes to show you how they see this as a direct national security threat, just as we're seeing with some of our other European allies. They don't have the luxury of a ocean border the way we do here in America. They are much closer to the fight that we are, and it is that much more imminent and critical for them in terms of the threat that ISIS poses to them.
Hard to believe after the beheading of James Foley and the other mass executions that we have seen that the world hasn't risen up in greater numbers against ISIS.
I completely agree. I think that it starts with leadership here in Washington. We need to make sure that we're letting the American people know what the threat of ISIS really is. I think it speaks volumes that, certain members of the administration were coming forward with what the threat actually was and how imminent it is, and we saw them sort of get reined back in. ISIS poses a real and imminent threat to our nation, and we need to make sure that we fighting it accordingly.
Amber Barno, Concerned Veterans for America. Thank you.